following program are pre-recorded.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Baca along with Brad Feldman from the Bismarck Bobcats. And Brad, no hockey this weekend. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it has been a crazy, awesome, great first half of the season so far.
Yeah, it has been. You know, I looked at the standings. You know, it's been a long time since I've seen that kind of a record on a Bobcat team, but they've been really fun to watch. When I talk to people at my kids' hockey games, hockey practices, they're like they love coming to the games because the talent level's there, and it's just fun to watch that kind of level, that kind of talent.
Okay, so a little recap. Watertown last weekend. So it was kind of a home and home back-to-back weekends. Took 3 out of 4 from Watertown, which was pretty good. And, you know, that's a scrappy little team. They just, for a first year, new addition to the league, they're tough. I mean, there's no quit in that game.
No, you know, we played them our first Central Division games of the season, and we put it to them pretty hard. And I had a group of Watertown kids and families here this last weekend. I was talking to them, and the one game that we lost the last 2 weeks to Watertown, I was at in Watertown, so I'm kind of taking the blame for that one.
Yeah, you're not allowed to go to games anymore.
No, that's what I was told by the coaches, so that's okay. I did tell the Watertown fans, I said, your team's getting better. Like, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with here in a couple of years. They're figuring things out. So, you know, when you're a new team, there's going to be a struggle, you know, just to get up to that level. But they're figuring it out pretty quick, and they're going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, another addition to the league, great addition there. And then, you know, I kind of want to do a little recap of the first half of the season. When you come out of the showcase with a positive record, let alone that doesn't happen for the Bobcats. For some reason, the showcase has not been a good measuring stick for the Bobcats. But this year, right out of the gate, showcase went well, and it was off to the races.
It really was. It really was. And I think we got off to the hottest start we've had in franchise history. And that just kind of set us up for the success we're having now. You know, I look at the standings right now. We're 24-3-0-1. And, you know, I think the talent level, like I keep going back to the talent level. The coaches, Garrett's doing a great job. Alec, his assistant coach, doing a great job getting these boys ready every single week. And you see it in the talent level when you have Chase Reed getting called up to the OHL and you got Tristan Trevino getting called up to the USHL. We obviously have the talent level on this team that can play at that next level.
And a lot of that really starts with the recruiting. I mean, the recruiting the Bobcats do is out of this world. Yeah,
you know, give Nico Kapitanovich and his staff all the credit, right? Like Lane Sedevy this last summer, you know, I'm in Hudson, Wisconsin with him at main camp. He put this team together along with Nico, and Garrett's getting the opportunity to coach it. And, yeah, well, I mean, they're going all over the place. And I hear the conversations in the office, you know, when they're talking about different players, it's like, how do you guys know all these people? But they do, because they have deep connections and deep relationships with people.
Well, it's been exciting this first half, and there's a little, I don't want to say trepidation, but it's like, okay, we've been so successful. The question is not when we're going to level off a little bit, because, you know, it's a long season. There's lulls. We haven't had that yet. We've fought through the injury bug a little bit, and this team's just steamrolling. But the second half of the schedule, the second half of the season gets a little harder, doesn't it?
It does, you know, and that's the thing. This Christmas break couldn't come at a better time. You know, we played shorthanded last weekend with 15 guys. You know, we didn't have a full line of forwards or D, so it's nice to get that break so these guys can get healthy. And, you know, the second half of the season, we're going to see a lot of Austin, Minot, Aberdeen. We haven't even seen St. Cloud yet this year. So the schedule's going to get tough here, because we're going to be playing nothing but playoff teams the second half of the season. So we'll see what the boys are made of. And I know they're going to be ready for the challenge, because Garrett and Alec are going to have them ready to go.
You know, that's the thing when I looked at the schedule. A lot of the new, younger teams in the league, they were front-loaded in the first half of the season. You know, there's positives and negatives to backloading the schedule with all the powerhouses, the traditional teams that are always there in the fight. But that just basically means playoff hockey starts after the New Year's break.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing I've been telling all the fans that bring that up to me. I'm like, hey, this isn't a bad thing. You got to play the best, and that's going to get you ready for that playoffs. Because the playoffs are a whole different animal. If anyone was here last year to watch it, against Aberdeen, we should have steamrolled Aberdeen last year, and we end up barely winning in 5 games. And you got to get prepared, and you're going to get prepared by playing those Austins and Minots on a weekly basis.
Definitely a little seasoning, toughen up the team a little bit. As far as the roster, and I know you're in the office and listen to the coaches talk, one of the things we always look at, especially at the Christmas break, is, what do we need? Do we need another defenseman? Do we need another forward? Where do we need a little help? I look at this roster and, minus the call-ups and other opportunities for some of the kids, this team's tight, top to bottom. I don't see a hole.
Well, no, and I don't think there is a hole. And Tristan Trevino is going to be back after the Christmas break. We lost Alexander Kim. He's going and playing for Kazakhstan in the World Juniors. Like, what an experience for him, right? And then you got a couple guys that are hurt, but once they all come back, that's one conversation I've had with another employee that's been here for a long time is, okay, so we bring another guy into the fold. Who sits?
Yeah.
Who do you sit down? When we are fully healthy and we have all our lines in place, I honestly don't know if that is a tough conversation to have with a kid that, hey, you've been here all year, but you know what? We got this guy. We're gonna slot him in.
Well, and on top of that, you've been here all year. You've performed how and where we've needed you to perform. Yeah, you can't sit somebody like that because, again, it's about developing the kids and getting them on to the next level. And when you've got a kid that's doing exactly that, you can't sit them. You just can't.
You can't, because when that happens, when you start doing stuff like that, that's when you lose players' interest. That's when you lose the locker room, and that's when a team like we have right now can go downhill in a hurry.
It's a very tight locker room, too. That's one of the nice things to see about the Bobcats this year. Year in, year out. That's one of the things, the quality of the kids that are here playing for the Bobcats. The locker room is usually not an issue. It's a good, tight-knit group of guys. New season starts basically New Year's Eve. Of course, the old rivalry that we always enjoy. Oh, yeah. New Year's game, Minot Minotauros.
I'm excited to watch that because last time they were here right before Thanksgiving, it was a tight, tough-fought game, and, they're going to come down here. They're going to want some revenge on us because we beat them here before Thanksgiving, and it'll be fun. It'll be a measuring stick, right after the holiday break, but that night, we're going to have special jerseys that we auction off. I'm going to tell you right now, they're some of the nicest jerseys we've ever had on New Year's Eve. They are going to be glow in the dark.
Ooh.
So kind of a neat little twist there.
Hey, did you ever play night golf?
I did play night golf one time. It was a par 3 course out in Minneapolis, and they had lights on the course.
So maybe you can find some glow in the dark pucks for this.
Yeah.
Shut all the lights off. We got the jerseys that glow in the dark. We got pucks that glow in the dark, and maybe put some of that glow in the dark paint over the on the lines and around the goal mouth, and that might be a thing.
You mean kind of like the cosmic baseball they did last summer?
Exactly.
That was pretty cool.
Glow in the dark hockey. I'm in.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
That would be pretty cool. It's going to be a great series. Always New Year's Eve is a great game with the Minot Minotauros coming to town. Brad Feldman with the Bismarck Bobcats. Of course, this is the home of the Bobcats. Home and away, Super Talk 1270. You can catch all the action right here. And, of course, tickets. Always go online, get your tickets. If you haven't downloaded the Bobcat app, do that as well. BismarckBobcats.com. You can get all the information there. Brad, Merry Christmas, my friend.
You as well, Steve.
This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Yo, Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken. Joining us on the program, Jason from the National Weather Service. All right, Jason, I got to talk to you first about this little cold snap. Quite the little clipper system. Not a lot of snow amounts for the Bismarck Mandan area, but other places across the state that component of the freezing rain really caused some travel issues.
Yeah, it sounds like we had like a wintry mix there. And anytime you get that on the bare surface, yeah, it gets a little slick out there. So hopefully everyone was kind of taking it slow these last few days.
I know over in the eastern part of the state and up in the northeast portion of the state, some snow and some bad travel conditions, but we were spared some of that. But a lot of people starting to travel for the Christmas holidays, and this weekend is a big travel weekend. We do have a little warm-up coming our way, though, don't we?
Yeah, so, currently everyone's probably seeing those cold temperatures below zero this morning, but that'll be short-lived as this weekend, and each day will get progressively warmer, and then we're going to see highs in most areas back in the 30s by the holiday week next week.
So what does that mean as far as precipitation? Because the danger with that is if we do have something go through, it might be in the form of rain, freezing rain, and that could hinder travel.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're still, at least through the weekend, we're still in this northwest flow, which is what we've been in for a while. So you can get a wave or two that comes through there, kind of eyeballing today. If anyone's traveling today, maybe a quick shot of snow. And then next chance is looking like Sunday. And that's a mixed precipitation chance, as like you said, Steve, as we get those warmer temperatures, you got to kind of start worrying about, are we going to get some freezing rain with that or not?
All right, so as we start getting into Christmas itself, what's the forecast leading up? Because a little bit of warmer temperatures, is that going to hold for a while, and what's Christmas look like?
Yeah, so right now, looking at Christmas here, we're still seeing some warmer temperatures, which is nice. So highs, about the 30s or so. Limited chances for precipitation, so that's also good. And then we look even past Christmas. The Climate Prediction Center, they're going above normal temperatures to end the month of December with kind of like a near to maybe slightly above normal chance for precipitation. So it's going to be a little bit different of a Christmas than maybe some of us are used to.
Well, looking forward to some warmer temperatures for sure. As far as this winter setting up, I mean, it seems like we've been a little bit dry. We haven't had the snowfall amounts that we've typically had leading into the holiday season. That's got to affect the drought monitor a little bit, and really we could use some moisture, couldn't we?
Oh, absolutely. This time of year, I think that it would be better if it came as snow so we can hang on to it until it melts, because the ground's pretty much well frozen by now. I know those western areas, they were still kind of struggling, and we could use some snow. But yeah, the La Nina that was predicted is kind of shaping out somewhat like was predicted. With you have kind of a mildish fall, mildish start to the winter. So we're gonna have to see if we're gonna pay for this later on, early in the spring or later in the winter.
Well, unfortunately, I know a lot of producers out there, farmers and ranchers, really would like some more moisture, and we were kind of dry, which was nice for harvest, but heading into next spring's planting, getting a little moisture into the ground ahead of time is always a good thing. All right, so I'm going to ask you to predict a little bit. You mentioned the La Nina, and that's the kind of the flow pattern we've got set up. For those listeners that don't know, explain that. What is that weather system or that weather pattern that we're into with a La Nina?
Oh, absolutely. So so the weather is kind of all connected across the globe, and so one thing we monitor is surface temperatures of the ocean in the eastern Pacific, and so right now they're a little cooler than kind of average. So we call it a La Nina, versus when they're warmer, everyone knows the term El Nino. So when we get that La Nina, that jet stream kind of dips a little further south, so we get cooler temperatures, maybe kind of like that northwest flow pattern we've been seeing. Maybe that gives us a little more snow. So that's just kind of the pattern that we're in. But, there's other factors going on, so that's maybe why it's been a little bit drier to start. But we'll have to see as, we're expecting that pattern to kind of take shape for much of the winter.
Typically for us around here, what's the difference moisture content or moisture-wise and those opportunities to get more precipitation in a La Nina versus a La Nina?
Yeah, that's a great question here. So we'll just kind of take a look at the 3-month outlook here. That's pretty much that's fairly well favored for this La Nina pattern. So even if you just look at that from the Climate Prediction Center, you can kind of see that pattern of colder than normal temperatures. So that does stick out in La Nina. And then there's just we'd like a little more data for the precipitation. Right now, we have equal chances to slightly above normal chances. So, that just depends on where does that northwest flow kind of set up and where do those clipper waves come through.
All right, so for Christmas, travel, we're going to have some warmer temperatures, but a little bit of precipitation coming through on Sunday. So kind of adjust your travel schedule accordingly, because that, with the warmer temperatures, could be in the form of rain or some freezing drizzle versus some snowfall, which is always a little bit better to travel on than icy roads. So, but other than that, we're looking at a pretty good holiday forecast.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the more milder ones we've had in a while, and depending on how warm we get, maybe some areas aren't as white as Christmas. I mean, some of this recent snowfall maybe kind of melts a little bit leading up in there, so it might be a different Christmas than some remember. And as you said, if you're out traveling, check out our partners at the DOT. They have a very nice app you can download on your phone and give you the latest road conditions. So it's always good to check before you're heading out.
I always like the cameras. I can go, you know what, I'm going to look, and yep, it's snowing there. I'm good.
Exactly. A lot of us need that second reassurance to make sure that what they're putting is correct. And they're usually pretty accurate, but never hurts to check those cameras.
The map's nice, but I really like the cameras. That extra reinforcement's always a good thing for me.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Well, Jason, you have a Merry Christmas, my friend, and we'll talk as we're getting into the new year. And Jason over at the National Weather Service, be safe in your travels, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners.
This is Talk of the Town. Jason over at the National Weather Service, setting up to be a pretty nice travel-wise, temperature-wise Christmas, but it's nice we've got the snow, so it is going to be a white Christmas. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
News, talk, and sports for Bismarck Mandan. Super Talk 1270. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Dr. Kevin Carls from Essentia Health. And Kevin, thanks for coming in this morning. Okay, a little background of you. You're a gastrointestinal, GI doctor, and you're actually right here from Bismarck.
Yep, originally grew up in Bismarck, local kid, the oldest of four. Went to school locally here, graduated from University of Mary quite a few years ago. Then,
but they don't have a med school.
That's true. Wound up heading out to UND, where I did grad school and medical school, and then after that, spent a few years out at Mayo Clinic doing internal medicine, and rounded up my training down at Indiana University in Indianapolis.
So, when people think of GI, and from a medical perspective, from a biology perspective, that covers a lot of stuff. It really does.
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at being a GI doc, it's top to bottom, isn't it?
Definitely. We do involve the entire digestive tract, and we think of things as the upper and lower. Upper digestive tract, things like acid reflux, difficulty swallowing, our issues with our appetite and fullness and nausea, and really symptoms that come on at the time of eating and so on, and all the way down to our lower digestive tract. Dealing with bowel movements, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, bleeding, inflammatory diseases, and even cancer screening and surveillance.
So why GI tract? When you're going to med school and there's a lot on the palate. It's like, okay, I want to pick a specialty.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
That's the discussion that goes on internally with all of us as we're going through.
No pun intended.
Exactly. Started out with general internal medicine and really just had a few experiences early on. I noticed I had an interest in the digestive tract, and then it was really first late in medical school where I had a chance to work out at Mayo Clinic for a little while with their gastrointestinal specialists out there, and they really solidified that interest.
Usually it's a doc or a professor or somebody kind of inspires a young student that's looking into a field, or there's a case that kind of triggers them? Is that kind of what happened with you?
Oh, absolutely. And strangely enough, I had actually started out in my third year medical school working with a surgeon here in town that specialized in bariatric surgery for weight loss. And one of the things they stressed going into that was, we want you to know the digestive tract. We want you to know what happens when we make these changes. We want you to know why this surgery works in the way it does. And I really hit the books looking into this, and it was really there where you start seeing the full spectrum of function of the digestive tract, and it just really stuck with me back then.
So what does a day in the life of a gastroenterologist look like?
It can vary from day to day, but generally we will have at least part of the day that's involved seeing patients in the clinic, talking about problems that they're having and working on solutions. But the other part of the day is in our GI lab, performing procedures, endoscopy, which is really the specialty of the physicians in gastroenterology, making sure that we're looking into the upper and the lower digestive tract, monitoring for precancerous conditions and diseases.
When you're looking at that encompassing piece, and when you've got a patient that presents a case, I'm a big advocate of triad of care, and you have to be your own best advocate. And I always tell people when they're going to a doctor for something that they think is bothering them, you got to be part of your case, because for doctors, and especially with, I can imagine, gastroenterology, you're kind of a sleuth, aren't you? You're kind of putting the pieces together, because what a lot of people don't understand is all these body systems are interconnected. They're intertwined, interwoven, and one thing over here might actually have a cause over here, but it's presenting itself to symptoms in some place entirely different. So you're doing a little sleuth work as a gastroenterology, because it is such a large system of the body that, okay, something here might start way over there.
Absolutely. And it's not just me as the doctor that's the sleuth here. I mean, sometimes a lot of these things involve processes, feelings, symptoms that we have as patients that we may take for granted, just the things that we expect to be normal every day. And this is why one of the things
or become accustomed to, if it's
exactly.
something slow over time, you're like, you don't really notice it. It's not like, oh, I broke my leg and I go to the doctor and get it fixed. It's things that start over time. You have to be aware of that.
Absolutely. And of course, this is the digestive tract. It's never everybody's most fun thing to talk about. Some folks are embarrassed about these types of things, and they sometimes don't know if their expectations are really what things should be like. And this is one of the reasons that we really encourage people. You see something that you think is abnormal, just start writing it down. Watch what's going on a day-to-day basis, and this will help you to recognize some of these patterns in your own body, and certainly more effectively communicate them with folks like myself, so that we can really look into this as well as possible and get you the help that you need.
But you got to give the right information for putting the sleuth or the detective on the right path.
Absolutely.
Of figuring something out. How do people do that? I mean, what are some of the things people should look for as signs and symptoms, or things that might be a little bit out of the ordinary? Because one of the things that we do in the upper Midwest especially is, I'm not going to go see my doctor. I'll tough it out. I'll work through that. But that can lead to a lot of other problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, and even just one of the most common things that I'll see people for are just problems with the bowel movements. Doc, I'm stopped up all the time, or I'll be so constipated one day and belly hurting, or I'll have diarrhea the next. Some of these things, honestly, they can vary from day to day based on our diet and fairly minor things. But you start noticing a pattern here that where those things that we know are normal just stop being that way. And these are things that we really have to look into more, and we're always telling people, if you start noticing blood coming out anywhere or the stools being black or red, well, that's a fairly obvious thing that folks are going to look for. But there are some of these less specific things with belly pains and so on.
We're talking with Dr. Kevin Carls, gastroenterologist at Essentia Health. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Dr. Kevin Carls, gastroenterologist from Essentia Health. And, okay, we talked about bowel movements a little bit, but what are some of the most common things that people come in about, hey, I've got this going on, or I've got an ailment, or I think something might be up? What are some of the common cases that you have to deal with as a gastroenterologist at Essentia?
Well, a lot of these things, again, are changes that we might notice that differ from our normal day-to-day. Heartburn is a really common one. Heartburn, bloating, changes in our appetite. These are really common everyday things. And, of course, changes in our bowel movements. Any unusual pain in the abdomen that we have. We'll also, as gastroenterologists, deal with issues with the liver as well. It might not be a symptom that gets you in to see us. It might be your doctor has noticed a change in your liver tests or other labs that perhaps even anemia that winds up being a reason that people come in to see us. Okay,
connect the dots for our listeners out there, because a lot of people don't think of GI and GI tract as liver, but things that go in to help digestion. I can also think of the pancreas, and there's a role for the appendix, all the things that play into that entire system. That's all interconnected, and that's all under your purvey.
Absolutely. I'll usually summarize it as we work on one end of the digestive tract to the other, and the different organs that are attached along the way. Our liver absolutely is one of those main organs. Pancreas as well. I don't particularly specialize in the pancreas as well as some of my partners do, but certainly there are a lot of conditions that involve that also.
So when you're looking at some of the other issues, you mentioned heartburn, and that seems to be a common one. In the past, a lot of it's been, well, take a pill. That methodology is kind of changing recently, because they're finding some of the medications, maybe you shouldn't be on them for a long term.
Sure. Well, and a good rule of thumb is that no medicine should necessarily be trusted as something that we just get put on and stay on for life. Now, there are some of our main medicines that we use to deal with things like heartburn, medicines we call PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, like omeprazole and pantoprazole. Gotten a bad rap over the years, and some of that actually has been based on some very poorly done or incorrect studies from 15, 20 years ago, where we have all of this concern that they could cause anything from problems with our bones like osteoporosis to kidney dysfunction to blood clots and strokes, possibly even things like dementia. I get people that come in to see me about this all the time that are extremely concerned about this, and they want to avoid these medications at all costs. Well, truthfully, the studies that supposedly showed that these things happen never actually showed that these things happen, and a lot of them have been disproven over the years as well. But the bottom line is, if we have a condition that we know can be helped by these medications, we want you to be on these until we feel that it's safe to try to come off of them. And that period might be a lot shorter than you think.
Is that one of the dangers when medications shift from a prescription to an over-the-counter?
Absolutely. And there are, great examples of these are medicines like omeprazole or Prilosec, as some folks know it. You'll have all of this availability, and you'll see a warning on the back of the box: only take for 14 days or talk to your doctor. A lot of people don't.
Talk to the doctor.
Well, they don't. And if you're taking one of these pills and you feel great, you might just say, hey, as long as I take this, I'm going to be fine. I don't need to bother my doctor with this. But what are you treating, and what is it that was feeling bad in the first place? And is it possible that there could be something going on that your doctor should hear about and maybe look into further? Things like reflux can put you at risk for cancers if we're not careful about them. And that's why it's always important to make sure that you and your doctor have a dialogue about these symptoms.
And that's one of the dangers, too, because people will treat, when they're try to treat themselves, they'll treat a symptom and not the root cause of something quite often. When you're looking at, an acid reflux issue, how much of it or how often does it come down to sitting down with a patient and some minor lifestyle changes? Because things change, and I'm starting to figure this out myself as we get older. I can't eat all the spicy food I used to eat, or, some different foods I need to add into my palate, maybe not drink as much caffeine. A lot of simple lifestyle changes can really play into a lot of the medications that people take.
Absolutely right. So much of what we do in gastroenterology wouldn't exist if it weren't for things we do with our lifestyle. Reflux as a phenomenon is mostly an issue related to how we eat. It's not because we make too much acid. It's not because there's necessarily something anatomically wrong with us. It's something that happens because we've, over time eaten meals that are too large, eaten meals that are too close to bedtime. And these things all lead to that increased pressure in the stomach that can force that acid up into our esophagus and cause the injury that's there. And same thing with problems with bowel movements that we see folks for. The typical diet that we have around here, it's just more convenient to avoid fiber. And truthfully, our colon relies on fiber to maintain normal function throughout the day.
But in moderation, because
to some degree,
too much of anything can be a little bad. And I recently had a colonoscopy that had to be aborted because I had too much fiber in my system. So, yeah, it's again in moderation, but simple lifestyle change.
Absolutely. And lifestyle changes are part of what we do. We getting back to the issue with these medications like omeprazole. Sure, using these medicines are great to heal injury from the reflux itself, but they don't actually prevent the reflux. They heal the injury. Well, if we make some of these necessary changes in how we eat, it reduces the reflux.
How cognizant do people need to be of age, because things change as you get older? The things I ate when I was 20 are not the things I should be eating when I'm 50.
I try and focus on that type of thing with patients in my practice a lot, in that it doesn't necessarily always matter what we eat as much as how we eat and the timing and so on. But, sometimes there are changes that occur in how things move through us as we age, and, how things like constipation can affect even upper digestive symptoms, and certainly our activity levels can also have an effect on how we feel when we eat certain things.
It could be as simple too as with acid reflux is don't lay down after you take lay down and take a nap after you eat a meal, because your acid's working and that can cause it as well. So
Definitely.
Some simple things.
Definitely.
This is Talk of the Town. We're talking with Dr. Kevin Carls of Essentia Health on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. Don't miss a Hannity show.
I know that there is a segment of society that would love a perpetual shutdown, and I guess we could live in a bubble, but who's going to build the bubble if everybody shuts down?
Weekday afternoons starting at 2 on Super Talk 1270.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken, along with Dr. Kevin Carles from Essentia Health, a gastroenterologist. And, all right, we talked about the acid reflux because usually when you think, or most people, when they have an issue, it's either the front end or the back end. And we talked about the front end, so let's talk a little bit about the back end. Sure. One of the things that are out there that maybe a lot of people don't understand is irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. That can come from a lot of different places.
Yeah. Well, and there's probably a number of different conditions that we think of as IBS, and
is it kind of an umbrella term for a lot of things?
It is to a degree. You know, we kind of typically think of IBS as being some kind of change in your normal bowel pattern that's associated with some type of abdominal pain. Usually we'll see some type of relationship between the pain and the meals that we eat, as well as pain around the time of bowel movements as well. But typically does not involve inflammation of the body, or of the digestive tract, does not involve things like weight loss or fevers or bleeding, and so these are some of the things that separate it from the concept of inflammatory bowel diseases, which is something else that we specialize in.
So that's IBD.
IBD.
Okay,
yeah.
So very different. So I'm imagining different course of treatment as well.
Yeah. Definitely different course of treatment. Believe it or not, symptoms can be similar in these to some degree. Whereas with things like irritable bowel, the solution is usually making sure that we've got appropriate amounts of fiber and fluids in our daily routine. With inflammatory bowel disease, you have a condition where your immune system is essentially run amok and it's attacking your digestive tract, causing problems that a simple dietary change is not going to fix. You need something to actually deal with that overactive immune system that's attacking.
So one of the things that pops into my mind is like Crohn's disease. Would that fall under that category?
Absolutely. Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis are our two major types of inflammatory bowel disease, and we deal with them in similar ways. We diagnose these through colonoscopy and sometimes upper endoscopy, depending on the patient, and then we use medications to try to take this overactive inflammation and reduce it to actually get the immune system to back off and leave the digestive tract alone so we can restore some of that normal function.
So with the Crohn's, that's kind of a little bit of a different systemic issue. With ulcerative colitis, people talk about, well, I got to touch a colitis all the time. Explain that for our listeners.
Well, ulcerative colitis is just that. It is an inflammatory disease that specifically affects the colon, or the lining of the colon itself.
But there's colitis, and then there's ulcerative colitis,
Sure.
and that's a much more serious condition.
Yeah. Colitis in general is just a term that means some inflammation of the colon. In fact, Crohn's disease can decide to just show up in the colon, and then we have Crohn's colitis. But there are also types of colitis caused by infections, like bacteria like C. difficile. We've got types of colitis that can be caused by problems with blood flow to our colon, one we call ischemic colitis, and so on. So a lot of different forms of inflammation and damage of the colon that can occur, and we treat them all differently.
So now when things get ulcerative and people think about a peptic ulcer or ulcerative colitis, that's a much more serious condition.
Definitely. And ulcerative colitis is just that. This inflammation can literally cause ulcers of the entire lining of the colon, and this can lead to bleeding, diarrhea, pain, and even things that affect other parts of the body, weight loss, and so on. There can even be symptoms that exist outside of the digestive tract because of this intense inflammation, like joint pains or rashes, and so on. And so it's always good for you to have a gastrointestinal specialist like myself to really stay on top of these things.
What are the typical ways, because I think in endoscopy, or how do you diagnose some of those conditions?
As a gastroenterologist, I'm a specialist in general endoscopy of the digestive tract. And the two main ones are the one we refer to as an upper endoscopy, or an EGD, with a tiny camera that goes through the mouth, down through the esophagus into the stomach and the first part of our small intestine. The other scope that we specialize in is colonoscopy. And of course, that's going in the other end and going up through the entire colon and usually seeing the lower end of the small intestine. And these procedures are done so that we can look to see, does this lining of our digestive tract appear normal and healthy the way it's supposed to? Sometimes it may look normal, and we can only find out that there is inflammation in that tissue by taking little samples or biopsies of the tissue while we're in there.
And you usually think about that with polyps.
Absolutely. And a polyp, of course, is something that sticks out a little more. It's certainly something that is different from the surrounding tissue. A polyp is a growth in the digestive tract, usually the colon that we think of, that has the potential to keep growing abnormally over time and eventually become a cancer. All colon cancer starts out as a polyp. Not all polyps, of course, have the potential for turning into cancer later on, but it's important that we realize that we all have the potential to make these things, particularly in our colon, and it's important to look for them from time to time.
So what are some of the, because the guidelines have changed recently and they've changed multiple times as far as what age should you start getting a colonoscopy, what age should you, the frequency of your colonoscopy, are there other underlying conditions? That's all really changed recently.
Yeah. Well, and we've always known for a while that people in general will have a tendency to start making these small precancerous growths we call polyps around age 50. And that's when we would always start looking for them. But we noticed that there were some people that would develop colon cancers earlier in life. And we've always tried to look for ways to predict this or ways to catch these earlier. And so about 7 years ago, the gastrointestinal societies got together and said, hey, you know what? We need to move this back. We started making the screening age 45 where we start everybody off. And this doesn't mean, you got the symptoms, you got belly pain, changes in your bowel movements, you should think of a colonoscopy. No, this is, if you're feeling normal and healthy, still, age 45, start thinking about getting those colonoscopies done because we expect you may have some of these polyps there.
And it's just, like with women with breast cancer and breast screenings, it's good preventative medicine. And that's a care plan that you need to craft with your physician and make sure that you have a plan of care. Because when I was first told, it's like, oh, nope, you need to be a little bit earlier and you... okay. But it took me a little by surprise because the criteria changed.
Yeah. And if there is anything that suggests you could be at an increased risk of colon cancer, let's say you've got multiple family members that have had precancerous polyps. If you've got anybody in your family that you're aware of that's had colon cancer, it doesn't just matter if it's a sibling, a parent, or a child of yours before the age of 60 like it always traditionally has been, but if you have anybody in the family that's had colon cancer, you may need to have that first colonoscopy earlier, perhaps at age 40 or earlier than that.
We're talking with Dr. Kevin Carls, Essentia GI Doc, over at Essentia Health. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Yeah.
Super Talk.
Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Dr. Kevin Carls, Essentia Health, gastroenterologist. And we're talking about screenings. Okay, colonoscopy, endoscopy, those are just a couple. There are other options now, and the medical field is expanding greatly. For somebody who would be a candidate, because we talked about if you have conditions that would warrant an earlier screening or an earlier colonoscopy, but there are some other options out there as well.
Absolutely. Now, if we think that there's an increased risk of colon cancer, then really colonoscopy is the gold standard. But just everyday folks with no symptoms, perfectly healthy, age 45, is colonoscopy my only option? Actually, it's not. We've got, most folks have seen commercials for products like Cologuard out there, where you send in stool, it gets checked out, they check it for signs of blood, for different genetic markers of polyp and tumor cells, and they send you a result back. And you can get this done at age 45 as well as an option. And whereas a colonoscopy, you get that and it's normal. You've got 10 years before you have to worry about it again. With a Cologuard, if you do that, you could have 3 years before you need to do that again, or any other type of screening. The thing to keep in mind about Cologuard is that it is a screening test that's meant to cast a broad net. It can sometimes have false positives and false negatives. It's also only meant for people that are at the lowest risk of colon cancer. If we've got somebody that has that family history or has symptoms going on, these folks actually don't qualify for Cologuard, because Cologuard actually wasn't designed to be effective in those circumstances. If you've ever had precancerous polyps, you actually don't qualify for Cologuard. And folks need to be aware of that.
Again, always talk to your physician and make sure that you have a plan of health with your physician, what's best for you. We talked about diet and nutrition a little bit already, but again, can't stress enough fiber and having a good diet, cutting out some of the things that you shouldn't be, all play a big role in having proper GI health. As far as preventative care, and we talked about some of the early screenings and stuff, but what are some of the things people need to be cognizant of to try to mitigate some of the risk? If you don't have some of the family history or pre-existing conditions, what's just good common practices?
Well, it kind of some of the stuff that we touched on already, making sure we're paying attention to the timing and the size of our meals. Sometimes the content of our meals is important. We already talked about fiber, but there are things like, omega-3 fatty acids that we know can be helpful for things like inflammation, and not having too much red meat in the diet can sometimes be beneficial as well. Physical activity is also a big one, surprisingly helpful for a lot of gastrointestinal issues that we deal with. Of course, things like smoking are bad for multiple different systems of our digestive tract. And of course, as a physician that specializes in liver health like myself, alcohol is another one of these things we need to be moderating, just to realizing that it can put a burden on certain parts of our digestive tract.
All right, I mentioned the screening criteria changing a little bit. What else has changed? What, medicine is always advancing. What are some of the advancements or some of the exciting things on the horizon for gastroenterology?
Boy, we've just got so many different categories or sections of gastroenterology where we're seeing advances these days. Inflammatory bowel disease has always been kind of a specialty of mine, where we used to have just a small handful of medicines we could pick from to try to help corral that overactive immune system in the past. Now we're getting to the point where we have dozens of different medicines that allow us to really customize that treatment to an individual patient's disease, which is not necessarily going to be exactly the same as everybody else's. We can monitor how those medicines are working. We even have liver diseases where we've never had treatments before, things like what we used to refer to as fatty liver disease, which we now know as metabolic dysfunction-associated liver disease. We never had any medicines for this, and now we're seeing great medicines that can actually reduce our risk of developing liver damage over time.
I've seen a lot of different changes because of COVID. What are some of the impacts that COVID may have had in the GI tract, or as people have been exposed to that, or some of the different changes in medicine when it comes to gastroenterology?
It's interesting. We did see a lot of issues regarding COVID early on. Certainly a lot of problems with IBS as a result or following courses of infections with COVID. It was very difficult sometimes with these patients of ours with inflammatory disease that were on immune suppressing medications when we were dealing with this crazy pandemic and trying to navigate with that. But for the most part now we don't see a lot of residual issues due to COVID.
What's the best advice you give somebody who's experiencing something that, I can just tough it out? What do you tell patients, or what do you tell our listeners out there that might have an issue?
Always, you never really want to
don't assume for one.
Don't assume that what's going on is just something you got to live with. Document what's happening with you. I bring up the term journaling. Keep an eye on how you're feeling day to day. Look for some of these patterns and what's going on. Don't be afraid to talk with somebody about it. And you can always start with your primary care doctor. As a gastroenterologist, I specialize in this stuff, but your primary care doctors and primary care providers are great for recognizing some of these things and helping you see stuff that could be concerning or really needs to be looked into more.
And, unlike a lot of other physicians where you go to an appointment, there's some prep work, or at least, knowing what to bring to the table when you go for a GI appointment.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and again, the issue of journaling that I mentioned there, see how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. Are there any particular foods that tend to bother you? Is there a timing that you can notice? Is morning worse for you? Are you having problems in the middle of the night? Are you losing weight when you're not trying to? These kind of things, just keep track of those. And then this will help you to organize your thoughts about what's going on in your body. This will allow you to communicate those to me or to your other physicians in a way that can really get to the heart of what's going on more quickly.
When it comes to gastroenterology, what do people need to know? What's your last word for GI tract health?
Never too early to consider how some little lifestyle changes can be very beneficial later. And this deals with diet and activity, like we mentioned. If something doesn't feel right, always talk it over with your primary care physician. And age does not necessarily matter. Don't take youth for granted. Just because you're young, there can still be issues that are very important. Talk to your doctors.
Dr. Kevin Carles, you can check them out over at Essentia Health. Make sure you stop by their website. A lot of great information on the Essentia Health website as well.
Yeah. I really have the privilege of being part of a great team at Essentia within gastroenterology. It's myself, Dr. Doug Renton, Dr. Nick Batista, Lisa Murdoff and Amanda Wiles, our nurse practitioners, and Carly Schlosser, our physician assistant. We're just a wonderfully strong department that is really excited about the opportunities we have to provide care here in town.
Great team over there at Essentia Health. Dr. Kevin Carles, gastroenterology doc. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Hey.
To Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach along with Jason Spees. You can catch Jason with This Week in Energy, Sunday mornings 10:30 or 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270. Well, I guess it goes through 10:30 too, Jason. Also, The Crude Life and multiple platforms, ESG University. And I wanted to get you on a little bit. Of course, big news this past weekend. President Trump, former President Trump, assassination attempt. A lot of conspiracy theories starting now. I wanted to get your take on what some of those are teeing up to be.
Well, thank you for having me on. And the first thing I usually do when I've done these interviews, and I've done 4 of them now, is just to start off by reminding everyone just to take a moment and remember there was somebody who did die, somebody whose family was impacted by this. So as fun as it is to flesh out conspiracies and point blame and ask questions and everything else, keep in mind, people were injured and someone did die. So that brings us to, kind of the conspiracies and what happened and a few other things. When I look at what happened, Steve, this is nothing short of government fail-safes failing. When you take a look at, and you've covered presidential events, I've covered 4. I've covered Bush Jr., I covered Obama, I covered Clinton, and I covered Trump. And so I'm familiar with a lot of the security personnel.
And do you remember exactly where you were when President Reagan was shot?
I was like 10 years old, 9 years old.
Yeah, so was
7 years old. I was born in 74, so it was the 81.
Older than that.
That happened?
Yeah, 1980.
Yeah.
So I was in my kitchen. We had the TV on. My grandmother was making dinner, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And
I remember more about buckwheat being shot from SNL than I do about Reagan being shot, unfortunately, with my childhood. So I was more of that. But
I remember where I was. It was one of those bellwether moments in my childhood. I remember everything. I remember, wow, okay, so the big ones for me, because I was kind of cognizant at that point, was I remember when Elvis died. I remember when Ronald Reagan got shot, and I remembered when the space shuttle blew up. Those were like the three from my childhood, indelible moments you're just not going to get out of your mind.
And this will be one for most people, because really, when you take a look at the media's role in this, when Reagan got shot, for example, it was not wall-to-wall coverage. They went to regular scheduled programming, and there was only three television stations, and PBS back then. Fox wasn't even around. And so fast forward to 9/11, it was the CNN channel for about 3 months.
Yeah.
CNN 24/7, just 9/11, and people were staying up all night watching it, and missing work, and it was just intensified. Now, that's exactly what's happening on social media. Most people's social media, including Colin Cowherd, who said that they do not like to do politics because he's a sports program, and he was at ESPN when all the sports announcers kind of got political, and he saw the ratings drop every week because people don't tune into sports for politics. But there are certain things that you have to speak of because it impacts the nation as a whole.
Well, I'm glad you brought up 9/11, though, because that was... And the reason I didn't include that, because, first of all, it wasn't my childhood, but there was a turning point, because I want to talk a little bit about the role of the media. Through 9/11, media had started to change a little bit. And then fast forward to where we are now, it's an entirely different platform. It is not the mainstream media from when the Challenger blew up or Ronald Reagan was shot. It's an entirely different animal at this point.
This is a great example because basically a lot of different people that I've been talking to, if they work for the government or are part of, the deep state or whatever you want to call it, they're the first ones to say, well, hey, conspiracy. They're the first ones to say, let's wait for the facts to come out. They're the first ones to say, hold off. Let me tell you the facts when we get them. Do you ever notice that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, okay, let's take a look at the facts. The facts are that there was someone less than, 150 feet? 150 yards, whatever, 400 feet? So the Secret Service intel is supposed to actually case the perimeter within 1,000. Okay, so what happened there? Do we have to look into the ESG, DEI hiring of the Secret Service agents? Because that is one of the great problems with ESG and DEI was this past weekend, because the first thing that the Secret Service head did was come in and totally revamp Secret Service to be more DEI friendly. And I remember this because there were Secret Service members really upset, saying that this is not a man or woman issue. This is are you above 6 feet tall or below 6 feet tall issue. The reason we hire people that are skilled and have physical attributes is because it is beneficial with protecting someone. But they didn't care. Okay, take a look at RFK Jr. He's not even given Secret Service intel or detail at all. And he's the son of Robert F. Kennedy, one of the most beloved people in U.S. history. So this is an example of how the government can use the public trust and public power as a weapon, because there were so many fail-safes that failed on Saturday that anybody who has any conspiracy, you have every right to hold your government accountable on this. Every right to.
Well, and you don't have to go
Because-
back that far. Just start, we're not going to get into the politics of COVID, but look at the conspiracy theories with the vaccines, and they've borne themselves out to be true. You don't have to go back very far for an example in how the mainstream media was complicit with that narrative, or whose narrative.
And
Now,
Steve, we're not talking about JFK here.
No.
We're talking about the same people that have been giving us extreme misinformation that have cost people lives, that have changed the government. Take a look at locally here.
We need media back.
Seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Just take a look at locally. Take a look at the state of North Dakota. Take a look at how the state of North Dakota has handled the tremendous boon that the oil industry has given and the unbelievable amount of federal funds that have come into their coffers. And look at what's happened. At the end of the day, you have the state of North Dakota calling landowners dapple jihadis. So this is what you get. This is what you get.
So from a trusted news source, and we all know who we're talking about here, that, shall we say, inner circle has destroyed what used to be a credible news source, and because they wrote the check. They just wrote a check for an agenda.
The inner circle or dirty dozen of the state of North Dakota has absolutely destroyed the media and has destroyed many businesses and lives. And it's no different than what happened on Saturday. In fact, the last time that I went off about how the dirty dozen and the inner circle in the state of North Dakota has destroyed so much of the public trust and so much of the media. Not even a week later, Kevin Kramer's son kills a policeman. And there has been almost zero discussion about that at all. In fact, the last I checked, the media was trying to frame that Kevin Kramer was the victim in this. So that's exactly what's going on here, is that you have a group that is abusing the public trust and the government so much that whether it's an anhydrous ammonia leak, whether it's a state trooper dying, or whether it's the president of the United States, former, with an assassination attempt, these are all fail-safes that fail. But they're done on purpose behind the scenes.
This is Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Jason Spees. You can catch Jason Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. right here on Super Talk 1270.
Talk 1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken. Joining us in the program, Jason from the National Weather Service. All right, Jason, I got to talk to you first about this little cold snap. Quite the little clipper system. Not a lot of snow amounts for the Bismarck-Mandan area, but other places across the state, that component of the freezing rain really caused some travel issues.
Yeah, it sounds like we had like a wintry mix there. Anytime you get that on the bare surface, it gets a little slick out there. So hopefully everyone was kind of taking it slow these last few days.
I know over in the eastern part of the state and up in the northeast portion of the state, some snow and some bad travel conditions, but we were spared some of that. But a lot of people starting to travel for the Christmas holidays, and this weekend is a big travel weekend. We do have a little warm-up coming our way, though, don't we?
Yeah, so, currently everyone's probably seeing those cold temperatures below zero this morning, but that'll be short-lived as this weekend and each day will get progressively warmer, and then we're going to see highs in most areas back in the 30s by the holiday week next week.
So what does that mean as far as precipitation? Because the danger with that is if we do have something go through, it might be in the form of rain, freezing rain, and that could hinder travel.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're still, at least through the weekend, we're still in this northwest flow, which is what we've been in for a while. So you can get a wave or two that comes through there, kind of eyeballing today. If anyone's traveling today, maybe a quick shot of snow. And then the next chance is looking like Sunday. And that's a mixed precipitation chance, as like you said, Steve, as we get those warmer temperatures, you got to kind of start worrying about, are we going to get some freezing rain with that or not?
All right, so as we start getting into Christmas itself, what's the forecast leading up? Because a little bit of warmer temperatures, is that going to hold for a while, and what's Christmas look like?
Yeah, so right now, looking at Christmas here, we're still seeing some warmer temperatures, which is nice. So highs, about the 30s or so. limited chances for precipitation, so that's also good. And then we look even past Christmas. The Climate Prediction Center, they're going above normal temperatures to end the month of December. It's kind of like a near to maybe slightly above normal chance for precipitation. So it's going to be a little bit different of a Christmas than maybe some of us are used to.
Well, looking forward to some warmer temperatures for sure. As far as this winter setting up, I mean, it seems like we've been a little bit dry. We haven't had the snowfall amounts that we've typically had leading into the holiday season. That's got to affect the drought monitor a little bit, and really we could use some moisture, couldn't we?
Oh, absolutely. This time of year, I think that it would be better if it came as snow so we can hang on to it until it melts because the ground's pretty much well frozen by now. I know those western areas, they were still kind of struggling, and we could use some snow. But the La Nina that was predicted is kind of shaping out somewhat like was predicted with you have kind of a mildish fall, mildish start to the winter. So we're going to have to see if we're going to pay for this later on, early in the spring or later in the winter.
Well, unfortunately, I know a lot of producers out there, farmers and ranchers, really would like some more moisture. And we were kind of dry, which was nice for harvest, but heading into next spring's planting, getting a little moisture into the ground ahead of time is always a good thing. All right, so I'm going to ask you to predict a little bit. You mentioned the La Nina, and that's the kind of the flow pattern we've got set up. For those listeners that don't know, explain that. What is that weather system or that weather pattern that we're into with a La Nina?
Oh, absolutely. So the weather is kind of all connected across the globe, and so one thing we monitor is surface temperatures of the ocean in the eastern Pacific, and so right now they're a little cooler than kind of average. So we call it a La Nina. Versus when they're warmer, everyone knows the term El Nino. So when we get that La Nina, that jet stream kind of dips a little further south, so we get cooler temperatures, maybe kind of like that northwest flow pattern we've been seeing. Maybe that gives us a little more snow. So that's just kind of the pattern that we're in. But, there's other factors going on, so that's maybe why it's been a little bit drier to start. But we'll have to see as, we're expecting that pattern to kind of take shape for much of the winter.
Typically for us around here, what's the difference moisture content or moisture-wise and those opportunities to get more precipitation in a La Nina versus a La Nina?
Yeah, that's a great question here. So we'll just kind of take a look at the 3-month outlook here. That's pretty much, that's fairly well favored for this La Nina pattern. So even if you just look at that from the Climate Prediction Center, you can kind of see that pattern of colder than normal temperatures. That does stick out in La Nina. And then there's just, we'd like a little more data for the precipitation. Right now we have equal chances to slightly above normal chances. So, that just depends on where does that northwest flow kind of set up and where do those clipper waves come through.
All right, so for Christmas, travel, we're going to have some warmer temperatures, but a little bit of precipitation coming through on Sunday. So kind of adjust your travel schedule accordingly because that, with the warmer temperatures, could be in the form of rain or some freezing drizzle versus some snowfall, which is always a little bit better to travel on than icy roads. So, but other than that, we're looking at a pretty good holiday forecast.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the more milder ones we've had in a while, and depending on how warm we get, maybe some areas aren't as light as Christmas. I mean, some of this recent snowfall maybe kind of melts a little bit leading up in there, so it might be a different Christmas than some remember. And as you said, if you're out traveling, check out our partners at the DOT. They have a very nice app you can download on your phone and give you the latest road conditions. So it's always good to check before you're heading out.
I always like the cameras. I can go, you know what? I'm going to look and, yep, it's snowing there. I'm good.
Exactly. A lot of us need that second reassurance to make sure that what they're putting is correct. And they're usually pretty accurate, but never hurts to check those cameras.
The map's nice, but I really like the cameras. That extra reinforcement's always a good thing for me.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Well, Jason, you have a Merry Christmas, my friend, and we'll talk as we're getting into the new year. And Jason over at the National Weather Service, be safe in your travels, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners.
This is Talk of the Town. Jason over the National Weather Service, setting up to be a pretty nice travel-wise, temperature-wise Christmas, but it's nice we've got the snow, so it is going to be a white Christmas. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday morning starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.